Hey, Basic here. We finally got a new shock for our budget bike. This is the Suntour Radeon, and I've been waiting a while for this. It took a little bit of time to get it shipped, but it finally arrived. I ended up buying it directly from Suntour. I saw some online on eBay, but I didn't quite trust the sellers on there, and I wanted to make sure to get a genuine one. So I just bought it directly from the manufacturer. It was a little more expensive. I think I paid 120 bucks for it, which kind of might not fit with our budget bike theme. However, most rear shocks are a lot more expensive than I thought. For example, the shock on my main bike, it's like $300. So 100 bucks for a pretty decent air shock isn't actually that bad. That said, I'd be a little careful with some of the off-brand ones because the seals probably aren't as good. They might leak air, and then you'd end up buying a nicer one further down the road anyway. So my recommendation is, if you're going to replace the shocks, you might as well put something a little nicer on there. So let's get this shock installed. First thing is first, we need to remove the old one. These are, I believe, 5mm Allen keys. So I'm going to put the old shock back in here, keep it nice and safe, and I'm going to grab my Park Tool 5mm. There are bolts on both sides of this, and I can feel the other side is spinning. Gonna need to hold that one steady. I'm gonna grab just a screwdriver to do that. If you have another set of Allen keys, that will be even better, but I'm just working with what I've got. So I'm gonna reach through here. I'm gonna use my L Allen key to hold that steady, and yep, there we go, not too bad. This is gonna be a really long bolt, and almost out. There it is. So on the far side, we have the short end, and this one, I believe, should be basically a long axle. There we go. And that's it. That's all there is to it. As you can see, there's a little bit of that blue stuff. That's Loctite. So I'm going to put a little bit back on there to make sure this doesn't unthread itself while riding, because that would be really, really dangerous. Let's get this bottom one out. Same deal. I'm going to reach through here and hold the back side still, if I can find it. There we go. On this side, it's pretty snug. There we go. Yeah, that Loctite doing its thing. And it is done. Okay. Same deal. This one has still a little bit of a blue on there. Okay, we'll make sure to replace that Loctite when we put this back in. I'm going to use my screwdriver and push that bolt through. And there we go. I can definitely tell that it has to go in one direction. So, yep, make sure that the long side goes in on the, I guess the non-chainring side, because it only goes in one direction. I'm gonna thread that in here a couple turns so I don't lose it and put it on my tray. And that should be it to get this old shock off. Yeah, that's all there is to it. Okay, so we're gonna need to reuse these plastic spacers, so I need to get those off. Put my screwdriver back up here, put my Allen key back in its spot. And this is why I'm not a big fan of this holder. It's not the most user-friendly thing, but I do like the tools themselves. All right. Oh, that just slides right out. Easy enough. Try and get the other one out. Yeah, it's greasy. Let me get some pliers. I'm gonna try not to scratch it while taking it apart. I don't really care about the metal sleeve so much, but I need to make sure these plastic pieces don't get damaged, because I do need to reuse those. So that one's good. This one, I'm gonna hold on the metal, and that just slides right out. Nice. We need to get the bottom ones off as well. Oh, yeah, these ones come off much easier. Excellent. Let's look at our new shock. All right, I'm gonna put it in this direction. Usually you have them facing upwards. It makes the controls easier to get at. So I'm going to throw these ones to go on the top. I'm going to put them in my pocket for right now. These ones on the bottom, these should just snap right on to these collars. Perfect. Yep, and these are pretty sturdy. They're not coming off. I do want to re-grease the axle that goes through here. It was pretty hard to get it out, and I want to make sure that it's not going to rub and wear out that bushing in there. So I'm going to put just a little dab of some of this Park Tool grease on it. All right, take the lid off, put that up here on the bike seat. And I think I got a paper towel in my pocket. Yeah, that'll work. A viewer recommended getting some of these little paint brushes for applying the grease, which I thought was a really good idea. I just haven't had a chance to get those yet. So we're gonna make do with what we've got. Okay, not a lot of grease, just enough that it should move smoothly. I'm just gonna dump that in there. Put this grease back over here. And let's get this bottom of the shock back in place. Remember, it appears our Suntour shock is a little bit wider than the old one because that doesn't fit in there like the old one did. So what are we going to do about that? Yeah, so without the bushings, there's too much space. With the bushings, it is too snug. We might have to trim these bushings down, which I'm not really too excited about. All right, we've got our sandpaper. I'm gonna take the bushing and just lightly go in circles. So I wanna make sure it stays as flat as possible. We got it sanded to just the right size, and as you may have noticed, I went back and forth quite a number of times to make sure that I didn't sand too much and have wobble in there. You want it to be a snug fit, but still enough that it can move. And that's just about what I wanted, so that's good. Before I put that bolt in, I am going to double check and make sure that the top ones fit, and I don't have to sand them down as well. So these ones just go on here. If I can get it to pop on, there we go. And these ones, I might have to sand them down too. All right. So I think we're at a good spot sanding wise. Let's slide in the bottom. Yep, that one's snug. Let's try and, did it backwards. I want this to be on the front side so I can actually get at it easier when I want to adjust the pressure. All right, so the bottom one works. Top one, it's also quite snug. But there we go, that fits in there. Yeah, I nudged the shock a little bit. There we go. Try and get it aligned as best you can. I'm gonna grab my bottom axle first. Remember, I already greased this one. If you haven't greased it, make sure you put just a little bit of grease on there. I'm gonna slide this through. That went in a lot smoother than it came out. I'm going to thread in the bolt on the other side. I'm going to grab my screwdriver and my 5mm. I'm going to put the Allen key on the back side to hold that bolt steady. I'm going to tighten this one It's not quite all the way through. Let's kind of tinker with it a little bit. There we go. All right, snug it up. You know what? I forgot to put on the Loctite. So I'm going to leave the axle portion of it in there because it's kind of a pain to get it to fit. And I'm just going to reach through, grab the bolts out like so. All right. I'm going to use some Loctite, and I'm using the purple Loctite. It came with the blue Loctite, which is a little bit stronger, but the purple is what I just happen to have on hand, and it will work just fine. If anything, I wouldn't mind it being a little easier to take apart if I ever have to take it apart in the future. So just a very small drop of Loctite on the threads is all you need. There is no need to completely cover it. All right, let's put this bolt back in. Threads in nicely. I'm going to hold that screwdriver steady while I grab my 5mm on this side and tighten it up. You can tighten it from either side, but this is the side I am working from. And I'm not going to crank it because remember, your frame is aluminum, and I'd rather not damage any of this by over tightening and then cracking all the paint, and you just don't need to do it. Plus, this has to be able to move a little bit, so if you tighten it too much, you're going to end up putting this thing in a bind. So in fact, I'm going to put it about a quarter turn looser. All right, let's put that top axle through. Put that right there. Grab my grease. Grab my axle. And again, I'm just going to use a little scrap of paper towel because I don't feel like getting my fingers greasy right now. And again, it doesn't take very much, just a little tiny bit, which will help the bolt slide through, as well as make sure that everything is nice and lubricated because it is a moving part. Okay. I'm going to take this bolt out, put it aside, put the grease over here, so I'm done with that. And let's try and get this aligned to go through. A little jiggling. I did nudge the suspension while doing this, so I might have to kind of move it around a little bit to get it to line up properly. There we go. All right, I am through the shock. Now this axle piece sits just barely inside of this, I don't know, this little lever arm on the other side. So I'm going to jiggle it around a little bit and try and get it to pop through. I'm actually going to use my screwdriver to give me a little more leverage as I wiggle it. See, the little pop right there? That was it falling into the countersinked piece on there. Gonna grab the bolt and the Loctite. Put just a little drop. That's all I need. And we're gonna put this back in the other side. My hands are a little greasy. It's hard to grip stuff. There we go. All right, get my 5mm. I am going to hold it with one end and turn on the other. And all right, we got the shock installed, and we need to tune the shock. But first, we need to make sure that the stanchion, which is this piece right here that goes up inside the shock, we need to make sure that's nice and clean. If there's any dirt or sand or grime on here, that can actually damage the seals inside the shock. So what I like to do is just get a little bit of the silicone spray. It's gonna both lubricate the shock and clean it off all with one wipe. So it's really easy to use. I do this probably once a week. It's fairly dusty where I ride, so any dust buildup I want to make sure is cleaned off as soon as possible, and that makes your seals stay in better shape for longer. So in order to tune this shock, we need to adjust what's called the sag. The sag is when you're sitting on the bike, completely stationary, not riding. It's how far this shock compresses. So the best way to do this is to find a wall, or in my case, my bike is propped up in this pallet, and just sit on the bike and use a zip tie that's around the stanchion very loosely. And when this compresses, it will push the zip tie down, and you can see how far the sag is. So the sag should be about 25% of the length of your stanchion right here. So I'm going to push this up to the top. I'm going to get on the bike and just sit on it to compress the shock down. All right, I'm using my hand right here just to help stabilize, and my full weight is on the seat of the bike. And that's all there is to it. I'm gonna get off. If I look down here, yeah, the shock hardly compressed at all. That means there's too much pressure in here, and I need to take some of that pressure out. I did look at the manual for this shock, and there's really not much helpful information in there. All it says is to set the sag for 25%, but it didn't give any recommendations around pressure versus body weight. So this is my Pro Bike Tool shock pump. I'll throw a link to this in the description. I like this a lot because of first how it attaches, and it has a little button here to let air out. So the way this attaches is really nice. You have this outer screw, which will attach it to the shock. Then you have this little red one, which will push the valve in so you don't actually lose any air when you take this on or off. Kind of similar to how, you know when you use like a foot pump on your tires, when you release it off the tire, you get that kind of spurt of air as some escapes. You don't have that problem with this pump. So I screwed the outer one in tightly. Now it's sealed, but as you see, there's no pressure on the gauge yet. As I screw this red one in, that then pushes the valve core in and lets air flow through. So they don't have any air getting lost to the atmosphere. So this came with 100 PSI. I'm gonna drop that down because we want our sag to be about 25%. So I'm gonna drop this down to maybe 75, maybe 60 PSI. Let's see how that is. So what I'm gonna do here is back the red pin out, and you'll hear a very slight bit of air getting out. I don't know if you heard that or not, but that's just a very small amount of air that was in this tube. And now I can unscrew the outer, and I don't lose any air from the shock itself. All right, so before I put my cap back on here, let's test that sag one more time. Put that to the side. So I'm gonna get on the bike. I'm gonna stabilize by holding something nearby, and I got my full weight on the bike. Get back off, come back down here, and yeah, that's about where we want it to be. That's probably maybe even a little more than 25%, but I do like, on just as my personal preference, I do like the rear shock being very, very squishy. I find this helps keep that back tire glued to the ground. So that's okay for me right now. I'm gonna leave the zip tie on here in case I wanna do some adjustments later. So I am just going to clip the end off and then push it down here. It can hang out down here, it's not gonna hurt anything. I wouldn't leave it up on the stanchion because you don't want it to cause any scratching, so leaving it kind of dangling on the bottom is totally fine. And that's it for the install. Don't forget to put your cap back on. In the next video, I'm gonna take this out for a ride, and I will do a review on this, as well as talk a little bit about this rebound adjustment. This shock does come in two different types, one with the rebound adjustment and one without. If you're the kind of rider that really likes to fine tune how the shock performs, make sure you get the one that has this adjustment on it. I think the version with the adjustment's a little more expensive, only like, I don't know, 15 bucks more. If you just want a really basic shock, then you can get the one without the adjustment and you'll save a few bucks. Anyway, thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next video where I go out and ride this thing, and have a great day.